Hi there, podcast fans. I'm Tom Gibbs. Welcome back to Telegraph Audio Football Club. The Premier League returns this week, and between now and Thursday, we'll be previewing 5 sides a day, alphabetically as nature intended. So, on episode 1, we have Arsenal, who have signed Pepe and no defenders. Aston Villa, who have signed everybody. 12 new arrivals and some worrying memories of Fulham last year. Bournemouth, meanwhile, have had a relatively quiet summer. Can they arrest their mild slide in 2019-20? Brighton and Hove Albion, they're hoping to play expansive, exciting football under Graham Potter, but should the focus be more on not getting relegated? And finally, Burnley, who've signed Jay Rodriguez and offloaded one of their 47 goalkeepers. Where can they hope to finish under Sean Dyche? Plus, Mina Rzouki previews La Liga, including the Gareth Bale saga, Barcelona, and why Kieran Trippier could enjoy his new life in Madrid. Let's take you now for the first time this season back into the audio recording facility where I'm joined, as ever, by Matt Law. How are you, Matt?
Feels like ages, not as ever.
It has been a while, yeah.
I missed loads at the end of last season,
Didn't get involved
didn't I?
in the women's pods we did.
No, I'd have loved to.
Yeah, we weren't caught up. It's fine.
Exactly. It wasn't through my choice, through your choice.
You've been rested.
Yeah, exactly.
Are you feeling rested?
I'm feeling the pressure of having to come back and perform.
Good. That's what we want. A little bit of healthy competition for places alongside him. Also back after a summer absence, Mina Rzouki. What's going on, Mina?
Hi, I don't feel like it's been ages. I feel like I was here like 3 days ago.
Oh, so you're not that pumped for the new season then?
I'm a little bit tired. I just feel like it's all come so soon.
Yes. Yeah, I think the Women's World Cup was part of that. I think it felt like, traditionally in these odd-numbered summers, it's felt like a bit more of a break from football. With the Women's World Cup feeling like a much bigger deal this time. It's
absolutely
straight back into it.
And then AFCON and Copa America and all of these ones.
Of course.
And the ICC, your favourite tournament.
It's been a pleasure watching that.
Who's going to win it?
Who do you think?
I have no interest in that competition.
I'm not sure
Who plays in it?
I'm not sure how it works, who's in it or where it's
Norwich
being played.
City, they'll win it.
Good. Next to Mina, welcome back, Ali Tweedale. How was your summer, Ali?
It was really good, yeah. I'm in full cricket mode.
Oh, no.
But that kind of means I'm ready for some football.
Excellent.
Yeah.
What's cricket?
That's the spirit, man. So what we're going to bring you today, as has already been mentioned, is a club-by-club preview of the Premier League season. This is part 1 of 4. We'll be doing 5 teams, Arsenal all the way to Burnley, in alphabetical order, of course. So we will start with Arsenal. And I suppose we should start with Unai Emery, who has apparently got a break clause in his contract, which could be activated at the end of this season. If they don't make the Champions League, Mina, do you think he will stick around?
It all depends, obviously, on... I don't know, because I think it's a little bit unfair considering how the market's gone for him. I do get that when you purchase someone like Nicolas Pepe, you're expecting this team to fly, but at the same time, I mean, they've still got Mustafi at the back. So I don't know how much of a say he's had in this transfer market. But I imagine that more than anything, that they do need a little bit of consistency. If they start again, it's going to be a problem now. I do think that they've brought in Edu as a director, and you've got Freddie Ljungberg as well there now, and they're trying to create this support system around Unai Emery. But whether or not they'll be happy with this performance, as long as money is being made, then I don't think anyone's really that interested in management when it comes to sporting performance.
Yeah, let's talk about Nicolas Pepe, Ali. Obviously a pretty splashy arrival for Arsenal. What sort of a player is he? Is he worth the money? It's a lot of money to spend on a player.
God, he's worth it.
Yeah, well, it kind of like remains to be seen, doesn't it, whether he's actually worth that money. But if they've needed a player who can beat a man and score goals for a while. They've got players that score goals and they've got players that beat men, but like Alex Iwobi can dribble for hours on end but just can't score goals. And if you replace that with someone like Pepe who can convert his League One form into the Premier League, then it'll definitely be worth it. It's a frightening attack now, those three, Lacazette, Aubameyang, Pepe, loads of pace, loads of goals. So yeah, he could well be worth it, definitely, yeah.
Interestingly, you've referred to him as a League One player. I think I would have said League One.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I'm not as
confused
cultured
there
as you.
It's so Arsenal, though, isn't it, to spend £72 million on an attacker
when
your defence is the problem.
Yeah, we had this from a listener. Ismail got in touch to say, are Arsenal correct by spending a lot on strikers but neglecting the defence? You too can email, of course, afcpodcast@telegraph.co.uk. But it does seem very strange, Matt.
It does. Sort of, JJ'd be good for this bit, actually, because
that is harsh on Mina and Ali.
Yeah, maybe they'll be great on this bit. My only thought, I've been thinking about this a lot and trying not to just slag Arsenal off like I sort of want to for their lack of buying defenders at the moment, albeit the transfer deadline hasn't passed just yet. All I can think is that certainly away from home and maybe against the better teams, Pepe allows them to play a bit more on the counter-attack, and therefore this will be part of setting up slightly differently for certain matches in that they can play a bit more defensive, a bit more secure, and have a ball over the top or something like that. That's all I can think.
His positioning is fantastic in the sense that it's absolutely true. If you want to play a counter-attacking system and then you allow him his positioning, he understands exactly how to do that, which means that you can play with a deeper defence so they don't need to play a high line. Whether or not that will be done is another thing. But there's also Dani Ceballos, and he's excellent as well when it comes to sort of blocking opposition from counter-attacking, taking the ball, recycling possession, and also helping to launch the team forward. So I think with those two players, you're looking at a specific counter-attacking system that can work in some situations that would be interesting on a tactical level. Even though Ceballos comes across as more of an elegant passer, he's really good when it comes to the defensive part of the game and in helping the team. And so is Nicolas Pepe. I think that he's been drilled and his pace, and he's very intelligent. He is literally the player to watch in Liga after Kylian Mbappe. He's been in sensational form. Obviously, I'm always the type of person who'd rather spend all my money on a Virgil van Dijk or a Matthias de Ligt or whatever it is. But since they don't seem to want to do that, they're obviously banking on the fact that they can just outscore the opponent and hope that their midfield, whether it be Guendouzi, Ceballos, as well as like Nicolas Pepe coming in and helping, will be enough. But it is a team effort because, anyway, we'll go into what happened afterwards, but I think it's important to have that unity, and I think these two players will be ones that attack but also help the team to defend as a unit.
I'd like to say one thing in kind of defence of Emery and Arsenal's summer. I totally agree that the defence needs work, but at the end, before Rob Holding got injured, he was actually really good, and he's young, and he's got a long time ahead of him. They've also invested heavily in Callum Chambers by buying him and then sending him out on loan to Fulham. They've got Socrates, who's improved loads. Everyone says...
Did you see him against Lyon?
Yeah, but like the defence teams need time to get better, to like work together and improve. That's 3 centre-backs that they've ahead of Mustafi. I know Mustafi's a problem. They've still got Mavropanos that people say is potentially has got lots of potential. Koscielny's still up in the air. They've got loads of defenders. Monreal can play at centre-back. Maybe Emery is... I think maybe Arsenal and Emery need a little bit of praise for possibly the idea of improving the players they've got. And not... If you spent 35 million on a Mustafi, then maybe don't go out and spend 35 million on another centre-back when it could just end up the same way.
Well, they are trying to loan out Rogani from Juventus. That would be interesting to watch because he's
not that good, is he?
I think he's rubbish, but everyone else in Italy thinks he's good.
Yeah,
so I don't know whether I just missed
him.
something. But I don't. I mean, I think that he's not physical enough as Serie A, so I don't know how that's going to pan out for this. But it's true that there are other players that they can look at, and obviously Saliba, even though he's been loaned back out to Saint Etienne, at least next year they'll have somebody.
You mentioned Koscielny, Ali. He refused to travel over the summer. Not a great look, is it? Your longest-serving player kicking off a little bit in order to force a move through. Suggests maybe things are a little bit broken behind the scenes there, Matt.
Yeah, it is very odd. If you were to pick a couple of players who might kick off at Arsenal, you wouldn't have Koscielny before now, probably in the top 10. It's one of those that really catches your eye and by surprise that something seriously wrong in the background's going on. I mean, he wanted a free transfer by the looks of things. And I think, I can't go into too much detail about this because I may write a story about this quite soon. I think there is a little bit of unhappiness amongst a few players behind the scenes there about their approach to new contracts. There are various players who either want a new contract or want to be allowed to talk to clubs who are offering to offer them a much better contract. And when Arsenal say kind of no to both, there are people getting a little bit unhappy, and certainly that's what happened with Koscielny. It's a bad look. Captain, all-round good guy, a steady Eddie, although his performances of late haven't been very good. It feels like he will have to leave. I mean, he doesn't have to leave by the English transfer deadline because he will most likely go abroad anyway. So they've got a little bit of time to sort that out. But I would be very surprised if he played for them again.
He might be a steady Eddie, but have Arsenal now got a steady Edu with them?
Look at that. Early doors.
Yeah, well, I've been practicing all summer. He's back in, Edu, as a technical director. Ljungberg is there as a coach as well. It feels like there's been quite a lot of those backroom changes at Arsenal in the past few years. Is this a bit of stability now, do we think, with this new team in place?
I thought that, though, last time they sort of do this, they keep kind of shuffling around the deck chairs, hoping it all works out. Look, Edu looks like someone sensible to bring in. He knows the club. He's got a connection with the club. It's a bit like Chelsea and Petr Cech, although Edu has done this job for much longer than Petr Cech elsewhere. They got rid of Sven Mislintat midway through last season. They needed someone in that position to provide a link between kind of team staff and board staff, so he would do that. They say he hasn't really started work in this transfer window, so I don't think we can judge him on this transfer window.
He gave his backing to Gabriel Martinelli, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I think so, but I feel like he comes with a lot of baggage, so I don't know how to really judge this, because in Brazil at the time he worked alongside Chiche before, not just for Brazil. And they accomplished a lot of success. And then he went to, obviously, worked with the FA, the Brazilian FA, and then as the general manager. And he did really well in terms of improving traveling conditions. But then it was seen that he was offering Neymar a few more favors than the rest of the team. There was a lot of backlash about that, also where he chose to station them for the World Cup at the time. And his press conferences just looked like he would say something silly and then backtrack the whole time. And he came under huge fire for that. But Chiche believes in him. He's obviously done some good work before. So I don't know what to think of what he'll be like in Arsenal, whether it'll be a hit or not. Much like I don't know what to think of this team. They could either be one of the most beautiful teams to watch or one that just capitulates defensively.
They're a club that are still in a transition, aren't they? We're still only a year on from Wenger leaving, and Wenger did everything there. So it's still a time of like spreading out the jobs. So yes, I think
they've got to progress though. I mean, to go back to your original question, if they're 8th or 9th around Christmas time, Emery should be under pressure. I mean, they're a massive club. We shouldn't just always let them off the hook. We've been letting them off the hook for quite a long time now and saying, this is progression. They're going to rebuild. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. At some point, they need to actually look like they're progressing and starting to challenge others. And if they start to fall further back, you've got to put pressure on him because it's a huge club. They can't just be let off the hook.
Okay, but who can they really go for if they don't have Unai Emery? Like, who are they going to...
Patrick Vieira. If you're going to do the whole ex-Arsenal thing, Patrick Vieira's done a good job at Nice, highly rated manager. If I was to put money on who would be the next Arsenal manager if Emery were to go mid-season or at the end of the season,
and what, you think Patrick Vieira will come in and they'll finish above Tottenham?
That's not the point, though.
I guess the point is at the moment that it feels like everyone is pulling in the right direction at Arsenal. Before it was just rely on
Koscielny's not pulling in the right direction.
No. But yeah,
has Kolasinac threatened him? Yeah, that's the
that's
clearly the.
I feel sorry for Mesut Ozil in that.
Oh no,
man doesn't battle knife wielding.
Also, man is in car with his partner and potentially his kid, right?
Exactly, and all of a sudden, this isn't why Mesut Ozil's brave or captain material.
Have people been saying that?
What was being said about him?
I've seen that written around on Twitter and things, but I should ignore Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a horrendous thing to write.
Very, very good idea for your mental health. Should we move on, Matt, to Aston Villa?
Let's.
Premier League, Aston Villa, Matt.
Premier League champions 2019-2020.
I mean, that's wrong, isn't it? But let's talk about what they've done in the transfer market. They've signed 12 players at a cost of more than £100 million.
Biggest spenders in the Premier League this summer.
One of the sort of top 10 in Europe, right?
In the top 5 or 6, I think, yeah.
Crikey. I've got bad alarm bells ringing here. I've got Fulham last season, QPR when we got promoted.
Villa fans are going to be going mad with you saying that.
Yeah, but it's not wise, is it? It's not wise to spend that much money after getting promoted.
I'm going to tell you why they had to, and then you can all shoot me down. So at the end of last season, they lost about 12 players. either through loans expiring, cancelled contracts expiring. They had to replace those players. There's no way in a million years they couldn't replace those 12 players. Why it's completely different from Fulham. Fulham did a lot of their business the last week. Did it completely without the manager, pretty much, Jokanovic at the time. Villa have signed 3 players who were already on loan with them, one of whom was a massive part of their promotion. That's Tyrone Mings. 2 more who have played for the manager before. Engels, the Belgian, the manager tried to sign for Brentford this time last year. Heaton just looks like a no-brainer. Matt Targett.
Is he number 1?
Sorry?
Would he be number 1
yeah,
immediately?
100%. Matt Targett, you might not think he's the greatest left-back in the world, but he's a sort of no-risk Premier League player. There are 4 what I would call real gambles.
It's crazy that we've gone through this many and we've still got 4 more players to discuss.
Trezeguet, Marvellous Nakamba, great name. The striker Wesley and Douglas Luiz, who's very highly rated by Pep Guardiola, I would have as the 4 what you would call gambles. But I don't see, apart from the fact they've signed a lot of players and the 100 million figure, I don't see it like Fulham at all. I don't actually see it like that QPR spending spree.
I mean, that was uniquely weird and terrible.
Yeah, and it was done through a certain agent. It's complete. I'm not saying it's going to work, and there's no way 12 signings are all going to work in a million years, but it's not doing a Fulham or a QPR.
No, I agree with that. I think that everything that you've said is true. They had to make all these signings. My only concern is the defence, just because it wasn't exactly great even last season, and they've got 5 players, new ones. Obviously, I'm interested to see how that's going to go for them. And Wesley, I have no idea why that was a signing that was made. I feel like that's a huge gamble.
Wesley looks like a big gamble, and there's a lot riding on him because there's no...
Is he there to be like a sacrificial lamb, sort of like a Fernando Llorente, who just absorbs all the pressure and people play off him?
I do think there's a lot of that because they play a sort of 4-3-3, goals sort of from all areas of the pitch. I don't think they'll be thinking this guy needs to score 15, 20 goals. If he can score 10 goals, but I think a lot of it is taking the brunt of it and holding play up and things like that.
Yeah, because he's a modest scorer.
How much do you think the kind of heroes of the midfield last season? So was it Grealish, McGinn, Hourihane?
Yeah.
Hourihane? How do you? Is it Hourihane?
We've all been saying it wrong, so
right.
I'm not quite sure.
Okay, well, I won't attempt that then. How much are they going to play?
I think McGinn's going to be huge.
Great.
I think everyone's going to be talking about Grealish before the start of the season.
Yeah.
And as you know, I'm a big Jack Grealish fan, but I think we're going to be talking about John McGinn a fair bit on this pod. He is a really, really good player.
What sort of player is he?
He's a kind of James Milner, up and down, lots of legs, very high intensity, very high pressure, can score a very spectacular goal. Very large behind that he's good at sort of getting in the...
That's
in
really
the way
useful in
different
midfield.
players. Yeah, it is. John Terry's talked about John McGinn's behind quite a lot. I do think he's going to... a lot of people who don't watch Villa a lot and will be focusing on Grealish, I think will be taken aback by John McGinn.
So Sam Dean wrote a piece on Eden Hazard's...
He's not the same player as Eden
behind
Hazard. No
No.
way.
But
Not
are we
that kind
going
of
to
player.
see a
But he
piece
uses,
in
he uses
6
his
months'
backside
time
a lot.
on John McGinn's behind?
Yeah, I think so.
You can start writing it, Ali.
So
can't
where do you
wait.
think they're going to finish?
I think they will finish 14th, 15th. I think that it will be a kind of battle against relegation, but I don't see them going down, and I don't think they'll be too much in a scrap.
What about Grealish? It's been a while since we've seen him in the Premier League. He started brilliantly and then sort of faded away a little bit, but has come back incredibly, really, in the Championship. Is he coming back to the Premier League a much better player?
Yes, he's a lot stronger than he was when he was last in the Premier League. When he was playing under Tim Sherwood, they were playing him out wide a lot. He was a little bit lightweight. He's bulked up now. He's in the centre. He likes to come and get the ball. He's very brave in possession. His end product's got an awful lot better under Dean Smith in terms of assists and goals. So I do think we're seeing a different player. It's whether he's matured enough will be interesting, because it has been in the past that when the spotlight's been on him, he's got carried away and the maturity's let him down. And he was brilliant with that. They gave him the captaincy last season. He was fantastic with that last season. He does seem to have been on a full summer party.
He's got a new set of boots as well, which I've seen in the pre-season.
He has. I don't think he's got a new set of shin pads, unfortunately. He could do with a new set of shin pads. But it will be down to his maturity. But I think he'll be very good.
I'm slightly disappointed he's not wearing that Tatiel pair in the Premier League. It's remarkable he had them on in the Championship.
They're in a Villa
final.
museum now, apparently.
Oh, well, marvellous. What's the long-term aim for Villa, Matt? I mean, it feels right that Villa are back in the top flight, but we shouldn't forget that for much of their stay in the Premier League previously, they weren't really doing a lot for a lot of the time.
Harsh, that. Much of their recent stay in the Premier League. The O'Neill years, they were
O'Neill years, sure, and obviously, the Daly and Atkinson, Muller years, they were doing very well as well. But what's the realistic aim for the club?
The owners are seriously wealthy. I mean, I think they're the second wealthiest owners behind Man City's owners.
Really?
There's two of them, yeah. Wow. I mean, we are talking seriously. And, they've spent 120 odd million pounds this summer. And albeit on not star names, but they're at a stage of their progression coming up from the Championship where they can't really get star names. I think they're serious. I think they want to do what Wolves want to do. They want to get back into Europe. They want to make an impact. They don't just want to bounce around up and down from the Championship. They don't just want to bounce around from the bottom of the Premier League. But what they've got to do is they've got to stay in the Premier League for a couple of years.
I was going to say, presumably you'd take 17th.
Oh, God, yeah, 100%. I'd take it, snap your hand off. And also, they've got to be sensible. If things don't go well for the first 3 or 4 months, don't go start sacking Dean Smith, who's done a really good job. Just hold your nerve and be sensible. And as long as they don't get caught up in the craziness of it, with their wealth and good management, which they've done so far, they can make an impact eventually.
There is a model club for Aston Villa to imitate, and that club is, of course, Bournemouth, possibly the most stable team in the Premier League, also well coached, not a team prone to panicking. But how can they kick on, Ali, at this point? What should their aim be? Because it can't be motivating for their players to just stay in the Premier League. And actually, they seem to be regressing slightly. They were 9th in their first season, 12th and then 14th last year. Is that going to continue, and what can they do to change that?
It's so tough for a team like Bournemouth. They're clearly not one of the biggest clubs in England. It's their first time in the top flight's tiny ground. So it's really hard to know how should the fans just continue being grateful to be in the Premier League and be happy with maybe beating a Tottenham or Arsenal, and that's about it, and then ending up 16th again. It's really hard to know. But they do have at least a manager who plays good, attractive football, and they'll be entertained even if it's losing 5-3 to Palace on the final day of last season. It's still entertaining. So, yeah, I don't see them doing any better, really, than they have in recent years. Mid-table's really got to be the aim again. But, yeah, I don't really know what fans should want there, what more fans should want.
They started brilliantly last season. They were 6th in October, and they had a record points total for the team, 6 at that point in the season. Do we expect that again from Bournemouth, Mina? And can you shed any light on what it is that makes a team start well? Is it something they changed over the season, over the summer, that the rest of the league's failed to catch up on, or are they starting kind of more fit, or with a better plan than some other teams?
Yeah, it's interesting because it always depends whether or not they've changed the fitness routine, or whether people are really excited to play good football and just get back into it. And I do get the sense with Bournemouth, they always want to start well. They always have all these ideas they want to test out. And then something happens where they just think, oh, we can't compete with everyone here. So
you think it's a mental thing with them?
I do think so. And then concentration starts to go, and they start to sort of lose the will to fight in certain matches. I thought it was interesting, actually, in their loss against Manchester City at the time. They showed a lot of verve, a lot of intensity, a lot of desire to just work really hard, even if it meant not playing the kind of expansive football that they're known for. And I think they need to incorporate more of that, knowing sometimes that you have to just absorb the pressure, fight through it, and then find a way of doing something very, exciting or going for it. But they can't always be pretty. They have to stay focused, and I think that's going to be aimed for them. But it's difficult because we're talking about so many teams now, whether it be Leicester or Everton. I mean, the chasing pack alone is huge, not to mention the fact that no one can reach the top 2. So I don't really know realistically, without massive investment, how much a team can really improve. But it's exactly like Ali just said, at least they have attractive football to watch.
One thing that's gone a bit quiet with Bournemouth is talk of a new stadium. They seemed to be heading down that path and then said, I think it was last October, that they perhaps have been a bit optimistic with that. Jeremy Wilson spoke to Eddie Howe over the summer, who said basically the club needs to move during this time in the Premier League to have any real benefit, any long-lasting impact for their spell in the top flight. Do you agree with that, Matt? How important is it for them to get into a bigger ground?
The minute last season that I read that the new stadium had kind of been put onto hold, I worried for them because they can't go anywhere without that new stadium. They can't really do anything. That club's hit a glass ceiling without a new stadium, and Eddie Howe at some stage will feel he's hit a glass ceiling without that new stadium. If you're trying to convince Eddie Howe to stay, whether it be this summer, next summer, and there's no new stadium coming, at some point he's going to turn around and think there's nothing more I can do here. I worry a little bit for Bournemouth, not because I think they're going to go down. I don't think they're going to go down, and I don't think they're going to be in a relegation scrap. But I do worry that the ambition has gone slightly. A couple of years ago, or a year or so ago, even though they've been punching above their weight in the Premier League, it just felt they were very ambitious. They wanted the new stadium. They wanted to keep kicking on and kicking on. And now I'm not so sure. Now it's starting to feel like they're just happy to be there, and that tends to catch up with you at some point. And were Eddie Howe to feel the same and at some point leave, then you'd really start to worry for them. I don't like their business this summer. Philip Billing, he's okay. He was a good player in a bad side. Lloyd Kelly, kind of second choice under 21 right back. That seems a lot of money for him. They're another club. Why aren't they signing some central defenders? They always get done at the back. They could yet still lose Nathan Ake before the transfer deadline as well, which would be huge for them. Huge, yeah. I just don't quite know where they're going now, and I'm starting to fear for them. And if the stadium doesn't come back on the agenda, I think long term that'll be a real worry, and I think that will then feed into Eddie Howe's future.
In goal feels like a worry for me. They've got Boric and Begovic,
yeah, that's a very good point.
Brilliant, but they had that Mark Travers come through towards the end of the season.
He's only 20.
And he was good against Spurs, wasn't he?
He was very good against Spurs, yeah. And I started to think that he was going to be something special, but yeah, then he's played one more game and conceded 5. So I basically have.
He's 20 years old. There have been linked a lot with
yeah, but they
Butland
believe in him.
The
They've committed him to a long-term contract. I feel like in pre-season it's between him and Begovic. Like 45 minutes each to see that. I do think that they think that this is a kid who has a long-term future with the club. Gotten him on to sign a long-term contract. I do feel they've at least introduced a little bit of height into their team with Billing and Kelly.
They've got a huge team, don't they? They've got loads of massive people and very small people like Ryan Fraser.
Yeah, but, that's more what I think of when I think of them. I think of shorter players or
really
sometimes not.
Steve Cook and Simon Francis and Ake.
I tell you what, David Brooks is a problem for them.
Yeah, he starts the season injured, doesn't he?
Yeah, and he's a big player for them. And just when you said to Mina about starting a season well, that tends to be a lot to do with momentum from the previous season, momentum from pre-season, not having injuries. They didn't finish the season well. They've got a very key injury. I don't think they've had a wonderful summer in the transfer market. I actually think they could start really badly this summer because I don't feel, and I'm not in that club, I don't report every week on that club, so I might be reading this wrong, but I don't feel there's a momentum there going into this season.
I'm going to disagree with you on Philip Billing. I think there's something to be said for signing a player that has stood out in a particularly bad team. And there have been quite a few success stories of buying a player in the current market for relatively cheap, who's done well in the Premier League, can obviously play in the Premier League, but has got relegated. Xherdan Shaqiri and Arnautovic stand out. Obviously very different players to Philip Billing, but they were too good to play in the Championship, and I think Billing might be the same.
He has an ego on him, which I quite like. I feel like
as well, Mina. So
yeah. I'm obviously all into that. He's very technical. He is very technical, so I think that he's the perfect Eddie Howe player. I think that he just reinforces that midfield, I do agree that I think that he could at least do something. I'm not entirely sure whether he can obviously help that midfield, but if they're not going to start well, if you don't believe they're going to start well, and I don't believe they're going to end well, so they better have a great middle.
Right, well, let's stay pessimistic and on the South Coast, because next up it's Brighton and Hove Albion. Graham Potter is the new man in charge. He impressed at Swansea, but it seems to me that the thing that impressed people was more his style than the actual results. They only finished 10th in the Championship last season. Is it a concerning appointment for you, Ali? It feels to me as if they brought him in to sort the style of football out, which was not great for a lot of last season under Chris Hughton. But actually, the problem with Brighton was they nearly got relegated.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're in that funny zone of balancing whether they want to play more attractive football and lose out on their kind of like solidity that kept them up. And that is exactly what they're doing with Graham Potter. Apparently, the way he convinced their the expensive signing of this summer, Trossard, to come was by promising that they'll play more attractive football than they did last season. And yeah, the fans might love that, but I don't really see how he can come in, see that squad, not buy a striker and get them.
I think they are going to buy a striker.
Oh, okay. Well, good.
They're going to buy Neil Maupay from Brentford, who I actually think will be a good signing.
Right.
He's scored 20-odd goals in the Championship, and he looks like a striker who's capable of stepping up. And he's very different to what they've got. He's faster, he's more direct, he's powerful. I think he'll actually be a really good sign. They do need him. You're dead right. If they weren't to get him, they've got problems up front. Just to go back on Potter and what he did at Swansea, just because of Villa, I watched an awful lot of the Championship last season. I kind of followed it closer than maybe I normally would. 10th was actually a really good achievement. They, last summer, sold their best players, gave him no money to invest. They broke promises to him. They could have been a club that slipped through again, which has happened to other clubs. And I get that 10th for a club that's come down doesn't look great, but in the circumstances of what was going on behind the scenes at Swansea, with the ownership, with their lack of action in the market and selling people who he didn't want to sell and not replacing them, he actually did really, really well.
Fair point.
And did it playing good football as well, without having to just scrap to get that 10th. So I get why people think that he's got an opportunity that maybe, not that he doesn't deserve, but got the opportunity early with a Premier League club. But I actually think when you scratch beneath it, and if you were really watching what he was doing at that club, he did an incredibly good job. And Dan Ashworth knows him very well and probably has kept a very close eye on exactly what was going on at Swansea. It's going to be a tough season for them, for sure. You look like you want to jump in.
No, it's just that I agree with you exactly. I think the circumstances were pretty harsh. I think that he's done really well in the sense of he's not just somebody who plays pretty football, but if you're moving on from a pragmatist and you want to start investing in a coach and in an idea of football, then I think he's a good place to start for a club like Brighton. I think that in terms of, yes, I know that they have an aging forward line, a forward, but then there's Aaron Connolly, who's 19 years old. And the whole point of bringing in somebody like Graham Potter is that he works so well with the youth. And we know that because we can see Daniel James and how much he's improved, somebody like that. And they have, 50 million worth of signings, or probably more than that, of failed signings. 2 wingers that he can try to mould into being more of an attacking force. And that's where their problems are, because we know when crunch time hits, they can just line up and play very defensive football. But I think the whole point is that they need to score more goals. And if he can try to get something out of Izquierdo, and obviously the Iranian signing, Ali Reza Jahanbakhsh, if he can get that working. And I think that the whole point is we've invested before, it hasn't worked out for us, they're failed signings. We know that you're really good with youth. We know that you can revive certain players. So perhaps let's not invest in the squad and just believe in you and try to make this easy for you and hope that you can take our team forward.
Adam Webster, the centre-half they've got from Bristol City as well. I mean, look, I know it's always hard to know how players will step up, but he was really, really good in the Championship last season.
Is the thinking he might be in to replace Dunk, though?
He's a very different player. He carries the ball out from the back. I mean, it looks more like this is the guy who's going to implement the style change, because he was the best defender for carrying the ball out from the back in the Championship last season.
As step-ups go, going from a really performing well as a centre-back in the Championship to a defensive Premier League team probably goes, that as step-ups go, it's probably one of the easier ones to do. So if he was that good, then...
He looks a good signing to me.
Quite a gentle start for Brighton as well. Watford away, then West Ham and Southampton at home. So not necessarily too daunting for Graham Potter. I'm feeling more optimistic about Brighton than when we started. Let's finish this first section of the Premier League with Burnley Football Club, who were surprisingly leaky in defence last season. What do they have to do to tighten up at the back, Mina?
I think for them that the start of the season obviously had a lot to do with exhaustion because of the fact that they started earlier and all their European sort of hopes were lying on that. I think that it was just 6 more games than everything else. So I'm not sure how much of an excuse that offers them, but they started off really badly. When it comes to, we know that there's a great partnership in defence with Ben Mee and Tarkowski. I don't know do you think Tarkowski will stay?
It's a big 4 days for that. I mean,
Yes.
we're talking on Monday with the transfer window Thursday, and look, Tarkowski definitely wants to go, and whether Leicester will come in and spend the sort of 40 to 50 million it would take to sign him. He's got a 50 million release clause for top 6 clubs. So whether, again, a top 6 club suddenly panics and puts some money down for him.
Yeah, it's not going to be that surprising.
But that could be huge, whether Tarkowski stays or goes.
And that will tell you exactly whether or not that we can expect them to start shipping more goals or whether or not they'll tighten up. But you feel like they need a little bit of leadership at the back, and you need the whole team to pull together on this occasion. There isn't a player that I can say that they've signed or that they've started to do something in which I feel that it's going to save them. It's just a lot of, let's just see what Sean Dyche can do.
And they've also lost Tom Heaton, who we mentioned earlier.
Who's huge.
They've got a lot of goalkeepers though.
Yeah,
still. Like
but
Joe Hart's
Joe
still
Hart's
He was
there.
captain.
They've still got Pope.
He was captain as
Isn't
well.
he?
He's been
Pope
really
back?
complimentary of Joe Hart, and he thinks
Who has?
The coach.
That
The
doesn't make him
results
a
have
good
been a
goalkeeper.
disaster with Hart.
No, but- But maybe this preseason he's seen something, and
maybe.
that
Well, Nick Pope was good, but then he fell off the face of the earth, and I don't know where he is. Is he-
Bailey Peacock-Farrell coming in from Leeds as well, potentially. Although not entirely certain he's going to be a Premier League goalkeeper.
Jay
to
Rodriguez
rely on.
back is an interesting one, isn't he?
Think
Yeah.
he'll make much difference?
He did well at West Brom. I fear he's a bit slow for a return to the Premier League. I mean, 10 million in this market, 10 million is probably worth a gamble. He knows the club very well. He's obviously comfortable there. The fans like him. He could be a good signing. He could be a good signing. But they're a funny one, Burnley, because if you ask me every single window, I'd tell you that I really don't like Burnley's business at all. And yet Sean Dyche's thing is that he gets way more out of players than you expect him to get out of them. And he makes, the sum is greater than the parts at Burnley, and that's what he's brilliant at.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
it's very difficult to judge them on who they sign and who they let go, because if you were to do that every single window, you would write them off, I think. Dyche is just such a huge part of what they are.
Do you think he's ready for a move elsewhere now?
I don't know where, I hope I'm not betraying secrets, but you do send us this email with some thoughts on the night before, and I was thinking about this last night because I did actually bother reading your email,
thanks, Matt.
Mina. And I don't know where he'd go now. I was trying to, I literally brought up the Premier League table
Maybe
to
he
look at a club where he would go, and I couldn't think, not
wouldn't
because
get a
he
job
shouldn't.
anyway.
He should get a club, but because of his image and
Yeah.
perception and everything.
If Arsenal appointed him,
No
the
chance.
fans would go absolutely spare.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's not Bournemouth either if Eddie Howe leaves them.
No chance. Absolutely.
Do you think
no
they can
chance.
keep Dwight McNeil? Because I really would like him at Juve.
He's a really good.
He's
This
great.
is a really interesting season for him because he had his breakout season last season,
And this is the one that can consolidate him.
and defenders know him now. Managers know him. He's going to get targeted this season where
Absolutely.
he wasn't.
He won't
It's
have the
such a
space
big
that he's been
season.
offered last season.
No, but it's not to say he can't do it again. And if he does do it again, then you know he's a really top player.
Yeah, but if they lose him and they lose Tarkowski, then it's starting to look a little bit bleak.
You're listening to the Telegraph Audio Football Club, part of the Telegraph Podcasting Network. To find more of our podcasts, just go to telegraph.co.uk/podcasts.
Thanks very much, Pedro. That's some lovely laid-back Spanish guitar to introduce a song for Europe, which is today all about Spain, Mina. And
I love that there's a guitar there, but yeah.
yep, he's done extremely well. One big story coming out of Spain this summer, as far as we're concerned in this country, and it's Gareth Bale at Real Madrid. Is it looking most likely, Mina, now that he will stay there?
Much to Zinedine Zidane's dismay, it does look like he's probably going to end up there. Obviously, we know the Chinese market's closed. We know the English one's set to close soon. And there wasn't really a solution for Gareth Bale in which everyone was happy. We know that he wants to go somewhere where he's going to get paid. And Perez stopped him from going to China because he wanted a transfer that was more than 20 million, which they weren't really offering more than that. And he was also worried that because it's Suning and they also own Inter, whether or not he would be transferred to that club. And they don't really like Inter for what they tried to do with the Luka Modric last season. So there isn't really been a solution that can satisfy everyone. But we're talking about what he's set to earn until 2022, 50 million net, which is about 100 million gross that the club will have to pay. So, and I don't think Zidane is even looking at him when it comes to even starting a match or coming on. And I'll be honest, I know that he's come under a lot of pressure as Zidane has been criticised for the way that he's handled this, but I don't blame him. I feel like there's been a lot of bias. Everyone's like, oh, well, good on Gareth Bale for standing up for himself. But I don't think so. You came out of after the Champions League final 2 seasons ago and said you weren't getting enough playing time. Ronaldo left. You were asked to step up and be a leader and you didn't do anything and instead worked on your golf. Never attended anything with your teammates or looked like you made a genuine effort to try to integrate yourself at least within the family. Still don't speak the language. So I can understand that there's a little bit of anger coming from Zinedine Zidane, who always regularly said as a player, I wasn't the best, but I worked the hardest. And now he's faced with a player who he thinks is the best, but doesn't work hard.
Never has a man been so criticised for liking golf and an early night.
No, Tony Cruz likes an early night. Tony Cruz sleeps at 10
But he doesn't like
10 p.m.
golf. Does he like golf?
Well, I don't think he likes golf.
The combination of the two seems like the most offensive thing you can do in Spain ever.
You've got an image problem on your hands as a footballer
Yeah,
if you give the
change
impression that football isn't your favourite
you like
thing.
golf.
And I'm not saying it has to be, but you've got to be smarter about how you present yourself, haven't you?
Well, Federer wanted to be a football player, and so did Nadal. You don't see them practicing that rather than their back heel. What do you call? I'm so bad at tennis.
Backhand.
Backhand. That's the one.
Back heel.
Back heel.
I disagree with Mina. I think I don't.
If this was Alexis Sanchez, no one would be saying this.
I don't have a problem with Zidane wanting to get rid of Gareth Bale. I mean, that's completely his thing. The way he's done it is bizarre, though. He's left Real Madrid with nowhere to negotiate by coming out publicly and making it so obvious. Who's going to offer Real Madrid a fee when they know that Zidane's got this opinion of Bale? He's left Bale nowhere to go, the club nowhere to go with it. It just seems like the worst management ever.
Weren't you the guy who thought that Antonio Conte did, you sort of defended him when it came to Diego Costa? Right?
I didn't defend him. I love Conte and I love how mad he is and I love the way he did it just from a pure journalistic point of view. But it was a suicidal way to do it in terms of working for Chelsea. And it is very similar to that. It's a good analogy. It's this kind of washing your hands of a player, but the club now have to sort of deal with the mess. And here's a question. Who will last longer at Real Madrid, Bale or Zidane? I'm going Bale.
Ooh.
This is indeed a question because the whole point is when Zidane accepted this role was that he was going to have full power at the club.
He's
and
such a rubbish manager.
What?
He's an appalling manager.
Are you
3 times
joking?
Champions League winner,
He is an
Zinedine Zidane.
appalling
Yeah, exactly.
manager.
Tell me, he's won more Champions League than who? Like, he's amazing.
Alex Ferguson.
It was just a case of get a load of star players together. What he did well was bring
Star players. So what happened to
This is
PSG
so
then?
unfair.
Explain to me. What about Manchester City, who can't do anything for the last 6
He's a terrible manager.
Oh my God, that is
Where are the La
unbelievable.
Liga
Based on
titles?
what?
Based on, this Gareth Bale
La Liga
fiasco,
titles?
completely. I can't out him. I speak to a Real Madrid player who is astonished at how bad Zinedine Zidane is. He's tactically, not great.
Did you watch
Man
their
management,
run-up?
Appalling.
You can't be a terrible manager. And
He was
do
one of
what
the
he-
few-
Roberto Di Matteo won the Champions League.
No,
Yeah, but
no,
not
that's not the
3
same. He
times
didn't do
or
it
4
3.
times
Come
or
on.
whatever
And not
happened.
only that, look at what he did with Lucas Vazquez
It's just the
and
players
Marco
look- the
Asensio.
players look to me as though
when
they
he
manage
left,
themselves.
the kids weren't being given a chance. Like, as in he was the one who integrated that team so well. He's the one who brought in Casemiro that shielded the defense. He made them the pineapple, as everyone referred to them, in the dressing room harmony. He got everyone working together. No, I disagree with you. I think he's a great manager.
What was the pineapple before we leave this fiery debate behind?
The pineapple is basically that they were all, it's more like a Spanish term, but they were all like come together to form a pineapple because you could pick out in the pineapple, you can pick out the little, I don't know what you call them in English.
Spindles?
Yeah.
Sure.
Segments.
And if they all come together, and that was the thing that they used to kind of taunt Juventus with when we were both playing for the Champions League finals, that we're a pineapple in the dressing room, what are you?
Oh.
You know? And instead you just found Bonucci trying to beat up Dybala, and we were like, oh, come on, maybe we're not as united as we thought, you know?
Marvellous. What about Griezmann, Mina? He seemed to be off to Barcelona, then it all got blocked. What's going on there?
Well, yeah, it did get blocked because, and you totally understand this as well, in the sense that basically the release clause on the contract is 200 million, which went down to 120 million at the beginning of July. And that's when Barcelona activated it to take their man. And Atletico were arguing that, I'm sorry, but you approached this player well before that clause, like well before July. So we are demanding the 200 million. And they posted a complaint and it was being looked at, but apparently they've now settled it out of court. At least that's what, according to Onda Cero. So we'll see. I mean, he's staying with Barcelona. There's nothing to worry about, basically.
Without knowing anything real about this, so I'm probably not the person to say this. Surely Barcelona are just going to get their way because that's how Barcelona act, how they function. They just La Liga won't stand in the way of them getting their biggest signing.
There's a few whispers who said something similar to that, but I won't go into it.
Very coy. Finally, Mina, Kieran Trippier at Atletico Madrid. A lot of interest in him in the UK. Is he going to be part of a title-challenging team this season?
This is the exciting thing about this, because Atletico have really gone through a massive rejuvenation. They've done a Villa.
Massive rebuild, haven't they?
It's a massive rebuild. And they've gotten rid of, not gotten rid of, but we're talking about big players have left, obviously from Griezmann to Godin, their captain, to Juan Fran. And so it's going to be interesting about what's going to happen now. Rodri is another one. They've brought in a lot of good players. I think Alvaro Morata's doing splendidly for them. They've got Diego Costa still in the front line, and they've invested a lot of money in João Felix, who is supposed to be the talent to watch from Portugal. So I'm interested to see that. You've still got Savic and Jimenez at the back line, so I think that could be interesting as well. With Trippier, they wanted somebody who could bumble forward and have a strong delivery on an attacking sense, because they've got defensive options if it's not him. So they wanted to have an alternative to that, and I think that it's going to be so exciting to watch him. And as for Rodri, they've replaced him with Marcos Llorente, who is highly billed to do something exciting. He did very well for Real Madrid, despite them having a bad season, and despite him not necessarily getting all the minutes that he wants to. But as a defensive midfielder, he really did shine under Solari, so that'll be interesting to see. So the fact that you've got Cholo Simeone, you always feel like there's a level of being, you trust this man. He understands this team. He understands how to connect with the players. He wants to play a little bit more expansive than they have done recently. Whether or not he can manage that would be interesting to see. But they've got a lot of talent, and they've replaced the ones that have departed very well.
Trippier's a really interesting sign for them, because his delivery is his thing. His crossing is excellent. And with Morata thrives off balls into the box and that delivery, particularly from the right side. Having watched him at Chelsea a little bit, and the times he did do well at Chelsea was when Azpilicueta was getting that ball in from the right, and it feels like Trippier's almost been signed for Morata, because it looks like a really good partnership. It's strange to say a right back and a striker are going to end up being a partnership, but it feels like that is something they're working towards there.
Like that with
Mina always felt sorry for Morata at Chelsea, and I get what she was saying with the service, because they didn't cross the ball enough for him, and when they did, it worked. And so there's definitely a good theory there. I mean, people are laughing a little bit at Kieran Trippier turning up at Atletico Madrid.
Great move for him. Not a great season.
I think that's an incredible move for him. And also, I think he's the first Englishman to play there in 92 years or something like that. Fantastic move for him. I really hope it works out for him, because he's a grafter and he's a good lad.
I think there's a good chance it could work out. Just being in a team that is built to protect the defence, you've got players that will fill in for him, and that's what he needs, because he's not the greatest defender. He's a converted winger, so he will get forward, but maybe he will be better protected than he was at Spurs, like he was when he played for England at the World Cup and did so well. And as you said, a team that focuses on set pieces, he could really. It'd be great if it worked out for him, but I'm slightly worried that Boy from Bury gets homesick in 6 months' time. Might be what we see.
Well, do you think that he'll go to all the barbecues?
You better not like golf.
Like golf.
No golf
If he
allowed,
likes golf,
Kieran.
he's in trouble.
Not even mini golf.
At least he's playing for a good manager.
That's all for today. We will be back with you tomorrow. That's Tuesday with the second part of our bumper season preview slew of podcasts. We'll be covering Chelsea through to Liverpool via the Bundesliga. Please join us then. You can, of course, contact me on Twitter. It's @Tom_Gibbs. And the podcast as well. We have an email address. Why not get in contact with us? We'll answer your questions if they're good. afcpodcast@telegraph.co.uk is the address. We will, of course, read out the best of what you send us. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. Look for Telegraph Audio Football Club wherever you get your podcasts. What a great habit to get into as a new season resolution. Thanks to Joel Grove on the buttons. Thanks to you for your company. I'll talk to you again soon.